We're here today with Gabe. Gabe is a machine learning success manager at Snorkel AI, and he is going to talk with us about a client that we worked with recently. Gabe, would you like to introduce yourself further?
Sure, thanks, Matt. So my name's Gabe. I'm a machine learning success manager here at Snorkel. And a little bit of my background, I'm very much a technical data scientist by heart. And so a lot of the work I do is to get into the weeds and help with a lot of the delivery and advisement for being successful with the product.
So, data scientist by heart. Your heart is full of neurons and weights.
Mhm.
Okay, so let's get into the case. Tell us about who this client was.
Yeah, so this client is a large social media management platform that specifically helps social media influencers grab more information and target different users, give them data so they can actually be better influencers and be able to increase their outreach, increase their overall marketing as well, and
The issue here was it had something to do with adult content, right?
recommendation work. And so they have a large database of just different profiles, social media profiles of different influencers and different users. But what's critical for their data lake and for their team is understanding which of their profiles actually were adult content or not. And so this was critical for a new partnership, and that was going to be critical for the business this next year.
We've talked before, so I understand that they already had something in place that they were trying to improve upon. Can we talk about
Correct.
that a little bit?
Perfect. Okay. So yeah, this customer is working with a different vendor to do weak supervision and to programmatically label whether or not their profiles were adult content or not. However, the customer ran into some issues here. The models that they had, and I think the underlying label model worked well, but specifically this didn't work very well on a few different areas. They also weren't able to really label any initial data, which similarly was a big impediment for the project, as this customer didn't have any existing label data to start with to build a model.
Can you explain a little bit what you mean by it wasn't able to label new data?
Correct. This other vendor had some UI components where they could label some initial data. However, it wasn't working very well. It was difficult to label the data and bring it to the model. And I know it worked very slow, and they weren't able to really iterate quickly and label fast, which was a key requirement that they had.
They must have had some kind of model at the time, or did they have human labelers who were labeling these profiles?
Yeah, so they did have a model at the time. I think the model achieved about 85 recall, which is okay for their needs. But for them to really do well here, they needed something that hit in the upper 90s recall. That it and using this other vendor, it wasn't very easy to really improve and really increase the overall model results they were looking at as well.
Okay, so we have a client who has a model in place that is insufficient for their purposes,
Mhm.
and they're unable to get to sufficiency with the tools that they have. And then they came to Snorkel. So how did we help?
Yeah. So we helped in two key areas. The first was having a good annotation platform where they could easily label data and label it fast. It was a big effort, I think, across four different individuals that they were able to label about 6,000 different profiles as adult content or not, that then they could substantiate their model results with. And the key thing that was very helpful for this team was being able to label the data and having an easy way to incorporate all that labeled data into the existing model and to the model platform and for developing your machine learning solution. And then similarly, the platform worked well with really hyper focusing on recall and trying to improve that and get that as high as possible. Inside of the platform, they put in as much subject matter expertise into the model, to our labeling functions, and kind of our key workflow as part of the platform. And we're able to achieve very high model results as part of it. I think they ended up with about 96 recall, which was substantial and fit the key goals of their partnership.
And they reached that in just a couple of months, right? Just
3 weeks.
3 weeks.
Mhm.
Well, that if we were talking about fast, that's pretty fast.
The other key difficulty I'd say as part of this is having a platform that we can easily come back to, revalidate, and re-update the model. So what's actually been very helpful for this customer is that every about 6 months or so, our customer can simply bring in more data. They can tweak and specifically label a little bit more data and quickly validate their model results, tweak some of the model parameters, and get this done. Our customer recently validated their model results and finished this all in I think 2 days. And we're
Two
able
days.
to tweak the model, annotate some data, rerun the model, revalidate it, tweak results, and ensure that it still kind of fits their success requirements for it. So yeah, it's a very unique, I'd say, experience where our customers are able to work extremely fast and get to model results and validate results in a very short amount of time as well.
I have never personally had to deal with tagging profiles as adult or not adult, but I imagine the data drift could be pretty aggressive there. Is that
Yeah,
something that they were worrying about?
exactly. And so the key component in all of this is their success requirements and their success metrics were very high. Having a model that can consistently achieve that 95 recall is a very difficult task. And so it's very important to really revalidate it, right? Ensure that we expect data drift in just in terms of the profiles of in social media, as these can have a lot of different variants in terms of the information or what's provided for it. So it's very critical for them to have an easy validation process. They can come in, retest and see what the data drift or model drift is as part of it, and then revalidate and improve the model results in an extremely short period of time.
With that last revalidation, did you get any sense of how much it had drifted, or did they not report out on that? Which, of course, they don't need to.
We didn't discuss that. The key component is, they were able to reannotate, revalidate it, and ensure it kind of still fits those success requirements, which it continues to be able to do for them.
There are a lot of labeling functions that one can do within Snorkel Flow. So what kinds of labeling functions were most effective here? Because I know that you can use large language models, you can use cosine similarity. There's a lot that can be done within the platform. What was most effective here?
What's interesting is our use case is very substantially in terms of what types and how many labeling functions usually are required for achieving the success metrics that our customers are looking to achieve. So for this use case in particular, a lot of the LFs that they were needing, or labeling functions they needed to build, were very simple. They were generally more pattern based, really looking at specific keywords or regular expressions and really trying to find specific patterns, but they had a lot of them. I think at the end of the day, they built 160 labeling functions that were more simple, but really captured the breadth of all the different edge cases that will help them kind of achieve those really high success metrics they were looking at.
And 160, that sounds like a lot. What's typical for a project, for a similar project at Snorkel?
For projects that have very high success metrics, for projects that have more ambiguous data, you usually need, I'd say, more labeling functions than a typical project. And so for this use case, we had about 160. A different customer we had doing more NER, or named entity recognition work. They also needed quite a bit, just given the noisiness of the data. For a typical customer, we usually see anywhere between, on the low end, 10 labeling functions, and usually on the typical upper end, about 30 or so. But each one of these can be a variety of what we're looking at. Some are going to be more foundation model or large language model based. Some are going to be more pattern based. And a lot of what our customers are now exploring are our embedding based labeling functions. So trying to vectorize your text data and see patterns based on how similar some of the embeddings are with the other data points in your data set.
It was 160. And when they revalidated the model, how many did they add or tweak? Or was that something that we have information on?
I think overall they tweaked I think they added about another 5, maybe removed a few that just weren't really applicable anymore. But yeah, overall the model that they have, I'd say, works extremely well. They just didn't need as much, I'd say, model validation work as they initially expected.
In the pre-work for this interview, you had said something about validating their data lake. Can you explain that a little bit?
I'd say substantiating their data lake is probably the better way to phrase it. So for all of these different profiles that we have, how many of these are going to be adult content? And all of that is going to power their downstream, end user applications, their downstream recommendation models. This model specifically, and the outputs of it really sit at the center of all the additional analytics and models that they're trying to build outside of this as well.
Okay. So this is going to be a key piece that enables many other things at the company.
Yep, exactly.
Quite important. I think the last question that I wanted to get to, and it sounds like you've already kind of answered this, but let's just drill down on it. It sounds like at this point, the customer is up and running on their own. Is that about right?
That's correct. And so this use case, I'd say, was unique that there was a very strict timeline required for developing this, and a key, I'd say, long-term partnership was dependent on the results as part of this. We've been working with this customer for a few months. They're definitely interested in expanding their usage of Snorkel Flow, and they have a few other projects that are very well aligned, I'd say, to Snorkel's core offering. Currently, I'd say we have a few other projects in place that we're planning to develop together this year. Actually, one very similar to the project that this adult content classification project we work with them on. But yeah, we continue to be a close partner with them.
Well, Gabe, I think that has us all set here. Thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to talking again.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, Matt.